TARDIS is lured to Earth, London, 1985, by an alien distress signal. Investigating, the Doctor and Perry stumble upon an attempted bank robbery staged through the London sewers by a familiar foe, ex-Dalek agent Lytton. But who is he working for this time? For they soon discover there is something far nastier lurking in the sewers, the Cybermen. Why do the Silver Giants need a time machine? What is their devastating plan of attack? And what does it have to do with a catastrophic event that happened in the Doctor's past? The first story of Season 22 of Doctor Who, Attack of the Cybermen, aired on BBC One from the 5th to the 12th of January 1985. It was produced by John Nathan Turner, directed by Matthew Robinson, and written by Paula Moore. It stars Colin Baker as the Doctor, Nicola Bryant as Perry Brown, David Banks as the Cyber Leader, and Michael Kilgarriff as the Cyber Controller. Attack of the Cybermen was the first Sixth Doctor episode to have near excessive violence in the storyline. People were really confused and disliked the new Doctor, as he was so erratic and unstable in the previous episode a year prior. So when the new season of Doctor Who was set to premiere, fans did not know what to think of the new incarnation. For all they saw and knew, he was mentally deranged and a complete head case, rather like Brad Pitt from 12 Monkeys.
I guess they give you some chemical restraints, huh? Drugs!
He even tried to kill his own companion. Colin was very keen to get on with making the new series. He said, "When we came back to make the new series, we needed to make an impact. The production team made a change that would impact the show. They changed the episode format from 4 to 6 25 minutes to 2 45-minute episodes. This will be used in the 2005 reboot of Doctor Who. There are benefits to this, such as developing the characters and the story, but there will be fewer cliffhangers, which Doctor Who was known for having them be very frequent." The production team also decided to have the first story of the new season feature the Cybermen as the main antagonists. The Cybermen were, and still are, one of the most popular villains in Doctor Who. The director of the story, Matthew Robinson, said, "Whenever the Cybermen were announced, there was always a buzz as they are so popular. The main reason they brought the Cybermen back was to persuade people and fans of the show to give it another chance. They struggled to find writers for the story. They approached Jerry Davis, who wrote the majority of the early Cybermen stories, but Eric Saywood, who was script editor at the time, let him go as he felt unconvinced that Davis would write the Cybermen well. The reason for this was because in the original Cybermen episodes, they were always standing around and barely doing anything, a little bit like the UN." Eric then wrote the script himself. He had previously written the script for the penultimate story of Season 19, Earthshock, which was very popular, but this time there was a problem. Contracted script editors couldn't commission themselves to write scripts. He had already planned to write the season finale during his summer break before he was commissioned a script editor. Luckily, Eric had a friend called Paula Moore. Eric put her name on the credit for the script, even though she didn't write a single word of it. But continuity expert Ian Levine, who did have involvement in the show as a consultant, claimed he concepted the story and therefore should be credited. He and Eric had talked about storylines for what could be done for this season opener, and Ian brought up Telos, which is the primary setting for the story. Ian wrote the storyline and Eric wrote the dialogue. Eric said that Ian was in no way a co-writer. He was a very useful advisor. They never sat down and wrote it together. Ian had set the ground and Eric worked from there. The script was very complicated. It had numerous plot threads that needed to be put together. Matthew Robinson said that shows, not just Doctor Who, were getting very complicated with their storylines and plots. Matthew read the script for Attack of the Cybermen and found it very complex and hard to understand. The story contains multiple references to previous stories and plot points that were set up in Doctor Who's lore at this point. These include the Telos tombs in Tomb of the Cybermen, the Cybermen hiding in the sewers from the invasion, and strong story links to their original appearance, the 10th planet. Eric also decided to include Halley's Comet in the story, as at the time in 1985 it was coming back, so he felt he should include a contemporary touch to the script. The director was in for a challenge. Having overseen the production of Resurrection of the Daleks, Matthew Robinson, who was originally a freelancer, was clearly the man for the job. He had worked on what is arguably the most violent Doctor Who story of all time. He gets much praise from the cast for his excellency as a director. He had a great time working with Colin Baker and let him build up his character of the Doctor. Another link to Resurrection of the Daleks was the character of Lytton. Lytton was originally a side villain in his first appearance, as he was working for the Daleks and Davros. Eric felt he had left Lytton in mid-air at the end of the story. He wanted to bring him back and show what he had been up to on Earth. Attack of the Cybermen was the first to show what the conversion from human to Cyberman looked like. They technically did it originally in Tomb of the Cybermen, where Toberman was partially converted, but it was not the same extreme as what is shown here. They used this to show Litton's demise as he is captured by the Cybermen. This was also the second appearance of the Cyber Controller. His first appearance was in the second Doctor story, The Tomb of the Cybermen. He is actually played by the same person who played him in his debut, Michael Kilgareth. His appearance and design is very reminiscent of his original version, specifically the headpiece with the large brain case. They did change and improve things slightly, such as the voice and the overall design of the cyber armour. This was also the first and only story that showed that Telos never belonged to the Cybermen. The Cybermen colonised it after the demise of Mondas. They took Telos from a race of beings called the Cryons, a race of beings that are native to Telos and cannot survive without extreme low temperatures. The Cybermen used this against them by raising the temperature. Also, this story shows a prison camp that holds people who have been partially converted by the Cybermen being used as slaves. This shows that the Cybermen are fucking ruthless towards anyone or thing that stands in their way. This is also the start of the violent phase of Doctor Who. This would be very present in Colin Baker's first season in such stories as Vengeance on Varos and Revelation of the Daleks. Doctor Who had some stories previously that were violent. The Deadly Assassin is a prime example of this. Also my favourite Doctor Who story of all time, but none were as violent as this, although the Caves of Androzani and Resurrection of the Daleks came close to being extremely violent. But this was the start of a consistence of violent aspects and scenes in Doctor Who. So without further ado, let's get into my review on Attack of the Cybermen. Attack of the Cybermen is so underrated. I really like the idea of the Cybermen trying to prevent Mondas from its demise by going back in time and making sure they come out on top with their first encounter with the Doctor. The tension in the scenes on Telos and the sewers is done superbly. I like some of the comedy moments with the Sixth Doctor, specifically when he and Perry are surrounded by policemen with guns.
Never do such a stupid thing again. I could have killed you.
Colin Baker gives a great performance as the Doctor. It's such an improvement from his previous story, The Twin Dilemma. He can be very unpredictable, which I like to see sometimes in the Doctor. He's also very brutal in the episode, especially when he opens fire and kills 3 Cybermen and the Cyber Controller. He is still suffering from post-regeneration trauma at this point in the show, so he does come across as very erratic and unstable in what he does, but he is still on top form throughout the story.
Unstable? Unstable? Unstable!
Perry is pretty good as well. Nicola Bryant gives a good performance in the episode. She gets very frustrated with the Doctor as he gets her name wrong multiple times and confuses her with previous companions.
In the past couple of days, you've called me Tegan, Zoe, Susan. On one occasion, you even referred to me as Jamie.
The standout moment for me was when the two confront a false police officer and the Doctor decides to pull a prank in the process. She gets a lot to do in the episode, such as helping the natives of Telos, the Cryons, to take back Telos from the Cybermen. She can get a tad grating at times, but is still great nonetheless. The Cybermen are absolute brutes in the episode. The scene where they capture Litton and crush his hands to the point where they are bleeding is fucking grim to watch. Another scene I found disturbing was where Litton and Griffiths encounter 2 prisoners of the Cybermen that are trying to escape. The prisoners search the 2, only for them both to discover what the Cybermen do to their slaves.
This is what the Cybermen do to you.
The Cyber Leader and the Cyber Controller are excellent as well. See what I did there? David Banks makes a great return as the Cyber Leader. His voice is petrifying and intimidating. When Litton and his gang of criminals find the Cybermen in the sewers, it's really scary to watch and the music fits into it as well. Michael Kilgareth is pretty good as the Cyber Controller. He is intimidating as well, but some people over time have said he looks obese. I can kinda see why, but I would say that the Slitheen are way weightier than he is. His death scene is quite brutal, where he gets stabbed and the Doctor shoots him dead. Litton is a very interesting character. He was previously in Resurrection of the Daleks, where he was operating for the classic space Nazis. He really feels like a gun for hire and an ex-soldier, which he basically was. His demise is so horrible to watch. The scene where he gets his hands crushed to the point where blood is seen and ultimately is converted into a Cyberman. Very risky for 1980s BBC television. Litton gets captured first and the other 3 meet a horrible end when they are near to escaping the Cybermen. Griffith may look familiar to fans of 80s horror, as he was one of the locals in The Slaughtered Lamb in An American Werewolf in London.
Ew. That's enough! That's enough!
I thought the two prisoners/escapees, Bates and Stratton, were interesting to see. They were prisoners of the Cybermen that were partially converted, as their conversions failed, and were trying to escape from Telos. Bates does tend to rip into Stratton for his actions and incompetence during their attempt to break free. He gets very tough on Stratton, which can seem harsh but realistic in that situation. They're good side characters nevertheless. I do have some issues with the story though. I think the first part of the episode is quite slow and confusing. You really have to pay attention to what is happening. There are also references to previous stories such as the 10th Planet and Tomb of the Cybermen. This isn't bad at all, it's just if people are getting into Doctor Who, they will be confused if they see this episode first. I would go back and watch all the previous Cyberman stories in the classic series, the ones that exist anyway. I think the Cryons could have looked better. The costumes have a lot of potential but come across as quite cheap. They're a good concept, but I think more effort could have been put into making them look better. I also think it gets a little confusing with the elements to do with Halley's Comet, which is supposed to destroy Earth to prevent Mondas from being obliterated by Earth's atmosphere. Some people take issue with the ending of the episode. I personally think it's not an anticlimax. I think it's more of a moral ending with the Doctor kicking himself for not being able to save Lytton, as he thought he was an ally of his. The Cybermen obviously fail, and Perry tries to tell him that, but he won't have any of it. It's very powerful to see the Doctor like this, where he feels he has failed in some way. I hope Doctor Who has more moments like this in future episodes. All in all, the story is very good but very violent, which sums up Colin Baker's first season as the Doctor. I would watch other Cyberman stories first, such as Tomb of the Cybermen and the 10th Planet. If you want to view the story for yourself, you have the VHS tape from 2000, which came in the Cyberman tin with the 10th Planet, and you have the DVD release from 2009, which comes with a wealth of special features. Also, at the time when this review is being constructed, the collection Season 22 is up for pre-order. If you can't afford that, either wait for the standard edition or purchase the DVD release. And if you want more detail from the story, you have the Target novelisation from 1989, and the audiobook, which was released in a box set called Tales from the TARDIS in 2004. That's only if you can't be asked on reading the book.
A lazy piece of shite!
I would purchase the DVD release as it has some interesting featurettes and documentaries, including The Cold War, which is the behind the scenes documentary for the story and the source of information I used during the review. It also includes The Cyber Story, a brief history of the Cybermen in the classic series, Human Cyborg, an interview with Professor Kevin Warwick on the subject of cybernetics, The Cyber Generations, a gallery of the Cybermen throughout the series, Trails and Continuity, and Photo Gallery, and much more. DVD is very common, so you should be able to come by it very easily. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Please go follow me on Twitter. Please tell me your thoughts on Attack of the Cybermen. And of course, I'll see you next time.